That was the rondo.
Can you hear me?
What? Yes. There's a mic behind you, Dean.
Someone's parked in my spot. Let's hear it for the parking lot. Holy cow, I got here at 12 o'clock. I couldn't get a spot.
Mike's not on.
And there's a button. Let's try. I think I got it.
There it goes.
This is fine. That's fine.
Ask a 12-year-old.
Hello, Oyster Bay. Hello, Plainview. A secret. Shh. Only people that come to my concerts know this, especially in Plainview. I live in Plainview. But I'm unlisted. You're not going to find me. But in all seriousness, it's so good to see you. I know I saw some of you earlier, and of course you're used to coming to the holiday concert and the pops. And this group right here, the New York Brass Choir, was the one that started the Concert Pops of Long Island.
Right.
We started with 5 guys, and now a young lady as well. But we took the principal players of the quintet, of our brass quintet, and we took them and put them into the pops and created a Concert Pops and a Concert Pops orchestra, which I think it's pretty proud of. I'm very, very proud of, and I know many of you have been there, right? Well, we decided that we haven't done these library concerts in a while, and we're really excited about it. And I don't know whether it's because we didn't do a good job the first time. I didn't check with Andrea, but I turned to Michael. Michael and I have been together for a while, and I said, when they built this beautiful auditorium, I said, I think we were one of the first performers to be here. What year was that? We weren't invited back then. It was a long time ago. But in all seriousness, there's great variety of music that is here, not only at the library, but in the town of Oyster Bay, and I am so delighted to be a part of it. So what we did was we chose to do some of the music that we did on a recording. How many of you know what a record is? Okay, my people. A recording that we did with New York Brass Choir, which was released and has done very well. As a matter of fact, I saw it on Amazon. It's still on Amazon if you want a copy of what we're going to do today. If you have a record player, then you might want to buy it. If not, you could put it in a frame like mine is. But needless to say, the first piece of music you heard was the rondo. Many of you probably recognize it. It's a pretty popular piece. It's kind of a fanfare-ish piece to get your attention, wake you up if you fell asleep while you were waiting for us. But it is by Moret, a French composer. Most of you might know it because it was used for a TV show, Masterpiece Theater. Okay? And of course, when we did the advertisements for the concert, besides saying that we're going to do the music from our album, we said that we would do Bach to Broadway. So our second piece after our fanfare is a piece by Bach. It's called Joy. I think many of you will recognize and enjoy it. It's been written, of course, many of you know Bach was a great organist, and a lot of his music was written for organ. So think about 2 hands, 2 feet, all right? He worked really, really hard. We're playing each of those parts. I think you'll recognize it. I hope you enjoy it. Joy by Bach.
Thanks.
Great. And it is one of the beautiful songs of Bach's. Of course, it's transcribed from organ. And I don't know whether you realize it or not, but we didn't take any breath. We had no breath. I mean, no chance to take a breath. It was like, keep playing. I wish I was an organ. But while our job is hard to do that and just play the individual parts of the organ piece that he wrote, think about the guy who used to be the pumper for Bach's organ. Now remember, there was no fans, because fans, they use pipes, right? And the air goes through the pipes. Well, there's a guy in the back room doing this. You know those fireplace things that you have?
Yeah.
If you can imagine, he was a servant to Bach, okay? Because, of course, all the composers at that time, musicians, we were servants to somebody. Bach was a servant to the church, and he had servants. One of his servants was, of course, the poor guy that was in the back pumping the air into the organ, and he better keep going, because if you don't keep the sound going, it's not going to work. But this is a really hard piece. The next one takes us to Broadway, finally. Now, but this one you may not know. I know what I'm going to do. We're going to play it for you. I'll tell you this title. It's called Comedy Tonight. The question is, when we're done, how many of you know what Broadway musical is from?
Funny thing happened on the way to the
You know as
forum.
well as I do, anytime we do songs that you're familiar with, please sing. All right? Even in Bach chorales. I mean, if you know the thing, hum along, because you'll help us. But in all seriousness, this is Comedy Tonight. Think about the show, and I'll tell you what you get if you know the show it came from.
Got it already.
Don't look on the internet.
No, I didn't look. I know what it is.
All right, Comedy Tonight. So, you want to do it like
Who knows what show it came from?
Funny thing happened on the way to the forum.
I didn't hear a word you said.
Funny thing happened on the way to the forum.
Happened on the way to the forum.
Yes, a funny thing happened on the way to the forum by Stephen Sondheim, who just passed away just recently. Very, very whatever.
Get to come to another free show. You get to come to another free show.
Over here won 2 free tickets to the next concert.
That's the standard line. Yeah.
I'm presuming at the beginning you were reminded to turn off your recording devices, your cell phones, and things that make noise. Mine does not make any noise at this point. However, I am going to use it to help me introduce the next tune. The next tune is called Minuet, and it's from George Frederick Handel's Royal Fireworks music. So I have Googled it, and I've got it right here, and it says, the music for the Royal Fireworks is a suite in D major for wind instruments composed by George Frederick Handel in 1749 under the contract of George II of Great Britain. According to stories that I've heard, George Frederick Handel was German, and he was invited to England for a little vacation and to to stay there for a while, and he liked it so much he stayed much longer than he was supposed to. And of course, the King of Germany did not like that, and he was very angry and upset at George Frederick Handel. However, sometime after that, the King of Germany met, who was it? Met a princess or somebody in England, and they got married, and he became the King of England. So everything. And another thing that most people don't know, the concert was supposed to take place in Green Park, which is right in the middle of London. It's a beautiful, beautiful park. And the day before the concert, the stage that they had built specially for this burned down. But they did rebuild it, and a week later they presented the concert. So here we go, the Minuet from George Frederick Handel's Royal Fireworks.
We drew straws. I got this one. Now, this next piece, one thing I wanted to point out about that last piece is you notice there were times we were very loud and then we got very soft. This was a huge device at that time where you would have these antiphonal things where you'd have loud and soft, and it would show the differences. Okay, the next piece we're going to play is a selection from Sound of Music. Who remembers the movie? How many of us were brought there as children to the movie theater? Yeah, Julie Andrews, it was fantastic, wasn't it? It was so magical. The story behind the Sound of Music is a little dark. I think we all know what the story was. It was, you know, World War II, Austria. Now Maria, the nun, she was in the convent, and she was very young and kind of mischievous, and everybody was like, "Ay, Maria." And you know, the funny thing is, I was searching around and trying to find a surname for her, and they never really call her Miss anything. She's just Maria. So she gets hired by the Von Trapp family because his wife passed away. There's all these kids, they need a governess, and she brings music back into the house. And it's based on a family who is musical, and so we all love that story. So after a while, of course, Maria and the dad fall in love, and then they flee Austria. But what a beautiful movie, right? Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. And it was, what I have here, it's based on the 1949 memoir of Maria von Trapp. Obviously, she's married by now. And there's so many great songs. You are free to sing along. We will know if you are singing or not, and whoever doesn't sing has to play my part for the next piece. All right, so please, I hope you enjoy it. We enjoy playing it. Thank you.
Isn't that a great piece? How about a hand for the singers I heard? And I heard some of you humming too. Especially when we got to climb every mountain. I guess you guys go climbing a lot? It's the hills in Plainview and Massapequa, throughout the town of Oyster Bay, all the way to Oyster Bay, down to Massapequa. In any event, I'm glad you enjoyed that. Our next piece of music, we decided to do just this past week. It's not in the album, but it's because we have a virtuoso in this group. I know it's, we'd like to all think we're virtuosos because each individual part is being played, and without it, it would sound awful. So far, so good? Okay. Thank you. Well, I don't want to put any undue pressure on this virtuoso. But this past week, and this is what made me decide this piece when I spoke with her, is it was Mozart's birthday. All right? And there's a great horn concerto that we have done in the past, but we never did it with Janine. Janine is one of our stellar members. She's in the Pops. You see her every year. As a matter of fact, she comes from a very musical family because her husband, okay, is also a string bass player in my orchestra. And they are a very musical family. And I know I'm putting pressure on her to do this piece. I asked her, she says, as long as we do it early in the program. So this is, early. But also because her husband's here and he's going to listen to her. And they have to drive home together. All right? And I have to tell you, put two musicians in the car and you're going to hear it all night. No, many of you know my wife. Okay? And I do concerts, and when the concert is over, forget it. I get shit. She cuts me off at the knees. You did this, you did that. Why did you say that? But this is a musical issue. Mozart, when he wrote this piece, of course, wrote one of the great horn concertos. It is played with orchestras throughout the world, and we're just delighted that Janine has agreed to perform it with you. Third movement of the Mozart horn concerto. Let's welcome Janine.
Just if I could see all right. I said, find out. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. So this next one is by an African-American composer from the late 1800s, out in the mid-1900s, I think. Scott Joplin. Some of you might, yeah, there we go. One of the biggest ragtime writers, rags. I think he wrote about 40, the most famous one being the Maple Leaf Rag. We're not playing that one. No, this is another famous one. Once we play, you'll definitely recognize it. It's called The Entertainer. And this is arranged by Arthur Frankenpole. This arrangement was originally done for brass ensemble. Let me go back a little bit. The rag itself was originally written for player piano. We don't have any pianos. So then he wrote it for brass ensemble. We don't have a brass ensemble. So we're doing the brass quintet version of Scott Joplin's The Entertainer.
You go on the other side.
Yes. Our next selection was written by a gentleman named Samuel Scheidt, who was obviously a German composer, and he was Renaissance composer as opposed to Baroque. Baroque, he was just before the Baroque. And brass instruments at that time were nothing like they are today. Brass instruments, none of them had valves, and the trumpets were, some of them even were cornets, which were wooden instruments that were played like flutes or recorders. You covered holes. The trombones were the same. The trombone is the only brass instrument that has not changed since the day it was invented, about 2,000 years ago. And the reason is because of the slide. We'll go into that much, much later, how the trombone became what it is today. But anyway, Samuel Scheidt was a German composer, and this is his, one of the movements, Galliard Battaglia. This is the first movement, which is actually stereophonic, sort of, because we're going to do some little moving of the stage. I'm going to go over there, and the trumpet player is going to go there, and the trumpet player is going to go here. So you'll get both sides. What? Battle. You know what I said? No, I don't know what I said. It doesn't matter as long as I don't know what I said and you understand it. You're
Thank you.
Blast into it.
Aren't they great? You've had an opportunity to hear really Renaissance stereo. That's what we refer to it, because it's two trumpet players battling, you know. but it's played so perfectly and so beautifully. They're just great. I told you, virtuoso in our first chair and our second chair on our French horns. Haven't talked about the trombones yet. I don't want to move my luck. But this next piece of music I think you're going to recognize, although nowadays the recording industry, the movie industry, television industry has changed so much over our years. I joked earlier about the fact that we did a record and you knew what a record was. It's ironic that there are children that don't know what a record is. Although, thanks to some pop artists now, they're starting to press records again. I think it was last year or this particular year, this past year, that the record player became the most requested gift amongst children for Christmas and Hanukkah. Figure it out. But if you go to any of the stores like Target or Walmart or wherever you shop, the albums are like $25 and up. It's crazy, but they like it and they collect them. So albums are making a comeback. Maybe the next generation will know all about it. But this next piece of music is a little bit about our past and also our future, I hope. MGM. Everybody know what MGM means?
Sure.
All right, it's just
Metro
three letters and
Goldwyn
everyone
Mayer.
knows. Great movie makers. All right, every time you think of MGM, you think of that lion roaring. All right, and they have come through with many, many great shows. Many more musicals, so we have some of those songs in this arrangement. If you feel like singing along, by all means, if you know the real words, you can sing them. But if you don't, you can always
La
do
la 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 la.
All right, remember, it's important. I hope you enjoy it. MGM. How about a hand for our singers? That was good. Our Plainview Tobay singers. Michael, would you mind introducing
Next, Pete. Oh, here it is. The next selection is simply called Three Pieces, and it was written by Ludwig Wilhelm Mauer, who was, I'm not sure if he was German or Russian, but he was born in Germany, in Potsdam, in 1789. And he died in St. Petersburg in 1878, which means he lived to be 89 years old, which is pretty good. He was around the time of Beethoven, because Beethoven started writing his big stuff in the 20s and 30s, 1820s and 30s. So Mauer lived to be a little bit older than Beethoven. There are three selections. There's movement number one, Maestro alla Marcia, which means like a march. The second movement, Andante con moto, which simply means with motion. And the last movement is Allegro giocoso un poco agitato. I have no idea what any of that means.
Fast.
It's kind of fast.
Fast.
Now, traditionally, in the old school, the old style, you do not clap in between movements.
Right.
However, at this point, if you feel the need to clap in between movements, that's perfectly okay, because then we will understand and appreciate that you like the movement. Okay? Three pieces by Ludwig
It's
Wilhelm
normally against the
Mauer.
rules.
I've never heard Italian words, musical Italian words, said that way. Whoa. No. You know, Michael's originally from the South, and he never lost his Southern drawl, you know? He thinks he's a native Long Islander, New Yorker, but you heard what he said. A joke.
I've only lived here 65 years.
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of Italians in the audience will be very upset with you, but we'll let it slide because you play good slide.
I've been to Italy also 3 times.
Maestoso alla Marzia. What's the matter? It is.
movement number 2.
Andante con moto.
And he's Greek. Movement number 3.
Say it again in Italian.
Mamma mia.
This wasn't scripted.
We all just met. Try that again.
Movement number 3.
Allegro, giocoso, un poco agitato. That means if you don't play it right, you're aggravated.
You're gonna get agitated.
You're going to get aggravated. As you can see, we really enjoy making music, but a little humor too was great. Thank you, Michael. Sit down. No, I'm just kidding. When he said that I don't know, he said something, and did you ever pull a muscle? I swear it was in my chest. It pulled the knit to play. It was really hard. The second movement, thank God, was slow, but I got through it. But it reminded me of something when we were joking about the Italian. This is a conducting story, okay? Because I know so many of you have seen me conduct with the Pops. So I will tell you early in my career. Really?
No, it's on. You just weren't in front of it.
Oh, is that what happened? Okay. I have a big mouth, but I'm glad you can hear me. Okay. So anyway, early in my conducting career, I was engaged to conduct the Staten Island Musician Society concert band. They did the concerts outdoors in the parks in Staten Island. And it was predominantly Italian people there. And one of the concerts was specifically for Italians. I guess they had a feast or something like that. They have to understand, I'm married to an Italian, so I'm not saying anything bad. I don't even swear. But the truth is that, my Italian wasn't so good, although I knew my Italian words. In Greek and Italian, when you roll the R's and stuff like that, wasn't so bad. So anyway, we were doing a piece called La Gazza Ladra, okay, by Giacchino Rossini. I mean, you hear the way I pronounce it, it's okay. But when I was rehearsing with the musicians that week, one of my clarinet players was an Italian from Italy. All right, I'll never forget his name, Nino Moriali. I'd like to strangle him. Okay, this is a true story now. Nino Moriali comes up to me at intermission. He says, Karahalis, he says, your pronunciation's pretty good, but La Gazza Ladra, you're saying it wrong. He says, you got to emphasize the Gazza, right? So anyway, I'm not going to say it the way he told me to say it, because basically I cursed the audience. Right? I went, and the audience went, and I looked at Nino Moriali, and he's smiling that dirty. True story. Never asked him for pronounced Italian again. Right? But it's funny how this is, I'm telling you, it was early in my career. I was probably, it's got to be 30 years ago, and maybe more. I still remember that dirty rat's name. Well, now we'll change from the dirty rat Italian to a bass trombone player, my instrument. All right? John Cheatham wrote this piece. It's called Scherzo, and Scherzo's like a dance. It's fast. And if you know symphonies, every symphony has 4 movements. It's called fast, slow, dance, fast. And sometimes even Beethoven symphonies, you'll hear a Scherzo. So John Cheatham just wrote the Scherzo for brass, specifically for the instruments you see before you. And he was a bass trombone player in the San Diego Symphony. But it really became popular because the sound of this song sounds like an old TV commercial for something we no longer advertise, cigarettes.
Did he also write NBC Nightly News?
Yeah, right?
Yes, yes.
He was friends with John Lloyd. Me and Google are tight.
You guys keep Googling, and the next thing you know is our AI sitting up your plane.
This next piece is Canzona Prima a Quintet. How do you say mine? No. A cinque. Where's my husband? It's cinque, right?
Yes.
For 5? Cinque, yeah. I'm studying Japanese, so I get a little mixed up sometimes. Giovanni Gabrielli, middle of the 1500s to the early 1600s. It's not just a tire company, it's a composer. Italian, and he was an organist, very influential. He was in that period between Renaissance and Baroque, so sometimes you hear stuff like that happen. Some composers, it's more overt than others, like Beethoven. If you look at, and Strauss, if you look at their earlier work, Strauss is really overt. He's very classical, and as he progressed through his life, he got a little more atonal, a little wild. It's there's lots and lots of brass music arranged by Gabrielli. It sounds gorgeous. You're gonna love it. So, here it is. Cinque. Yeah, sounds delicious. And I'd like to thank Google.
Somebody's Googled.
That's probably my wife. Tell her
It's actually wrote Here we go.
Dean did indicate to you that I am from North Carolina, which is true.
Sounds like South Carolina.
I've been in New York.
Mike, use the mic.
Mike? Oh, this is Mike. I'm a Mike. Also. Anyway, Dean indicated to you that I was from North Carolina. I have lived in New York since 1969. Therefore, I am an avid Mets fan. So, and if they don't bring back Pete Alonso, I may never speak to him or see him again. Anyway, talking about my southern accent, which kind of creeps in under two conditions. Number one is if I'm mentally and physically a little tired, and since we had a 2.5-hour rehearsal just before we played, there are a few things that are not working up to snuff as far as I'm concerned. The other one is if I have a little bit of alcohol, and as soon as I go home tonight, I'm fixing me a double martini. So anyway, our next selection is called George M. Cohan Selections. I'm sure you're all familiar with George M. Cohan, the 4th of July. He was actually born on the 4th of July. And he's written a lot of American tunes, which is also very interesting in that he wrote actually the best American music that you can even think of. And he was, and I think you'll recognize all of these tunes that we're going to play by George M. Cohan. The arrangement is by Paul Nagel, who is a trumpet player. And of course, being a trumpet player, he writes a lot of good stuff for the trumpets. So enjoy George M. Cohan medley.
He just said, is North Carolina in the South?
And by the way, when I am home drinking my martinis, I will be watching Duke and UNC.
Thank you. Are they wonderful or what? These guys, thank girls. You guys are wonderful too. Thank you for singing along. I heard you loud and clear. So you know those songs, don't you? Well, this next song, there's no words to, never wrote any words to it. It was done by Leroy Anderson, who wrote a lot of music for Arthur Fiedler and the Boston Pops. It's a piece that we usually end our concerts with.
Bugles
It's a
Holiday.
quintet, but I don't know if you know this piece. It's kind of special. It is a piece written for 3 trumpet soloists and orchestra. All right? So I don't want to put any undue pressure on the trumpets, but if the 2 of them play this really well, they will sound like 3. But don't feel too badly about them. You see, Janine and Michael and I are going to be playing the other 50 pieces of the orchestra.
Bugler's Holiday. Bugler's Holiday.
Aren't they wonderful?
Yes.
You know, the amazing thing when you think about it is when an orchestra plays, okay, and the players are in my band or orchestra, the other instruments take over. They have rests. And when you play chamber music like this, you get no rest. There is no rest. And you're not plugged into an amplifier. Okay, so it's every single note is really important. Many of you know, I've never done this with the quintet, so I'm going to try it. We'll try it tonight, this afternoon. All my concerts with the Pops, what's my ending song?
Stars and Stripes Forever.
Okay, so I've never done it with the quintet, so we're going to give it a shot. All right? I don't know what it's going to sound like because I left my music home. No, I didn't. Actually, I'm so used to doing it like this. All right? This is hard. So you guys can conduct in the audience. All right? I would have you could do it right there. All right? So it'll be bam, bam, ba-dum, bam. Listen, at my age, I check the internet. They Google stuff. I don't. I just see chair exercises. Okay. You know, I got to keep myself in shape between concerts, right? I'm not going to the gym. It's too far. Too much effort.
There's no
I can
piccolo,
sweat at
though.
home.
No piccolo.
I could turn a record on and conduct to it, and it's a little exercise, but chair exercises. So now you're going to get your chair exercise for today. I want to see those arms moving. Right arm, if you're lefty, you're not a conductor. No, I'm... As we always say, no Dean Karahalis concert
is ever complete without the greatest
march
parts ever
written,
written. Stars and Stripes Forever. Bum, 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 bum.
Thank you all so very much. Thank you to Andrea and the Plainview Old Bethpage Library that made us feel so at home, and Lisa, of course, in the town of Oyster Bay. Hope we see you in the summer concert series, all right? And at Tiller Center next December. Until next time, God bless you and God bless America.